All right, we're in Parshas Vayera, and there's this is in the book of Torah Ohr. Torah Ohr, as we said before, are Maimorim that were from the first Rebbe of Chabad, the one who wrote the Tanya. Sometimes there's very difficult Kabbalistic ideas that are explained so that even people like us can understand it. Like us, but not necessarily us. So let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do. All right, let's take an example over here. Now, why is the Rebbe doing this? What is this idea of Chassidus? What does Chassidus do? Chassidus is trying to make God more personal. The Jews have this idea that God, there's only one God, and God, this one God of the Jews is not like the gods of the other nations. It's not that there's God, there's the world and there's other things, but there's also, as far as gods goes, there's only one. Right? No. Chassidus explains that when it says that God is one, it means that God creates everything. There's nothing except for God. Ein od milvado. Nothing except for God. But God creates the world in this very, very, very complex way. And the books of Kabbalah talk about this. A very tremendously complex and detailed and if you want to call it confusing way that doesn't seem like really anything has really any connection. And for sure you can't see a creator in the world. If Adam had not eaten from the tree, as the world would not be confusing. We would just realize it's an amazing miracle. The world, everything's a miracle, everything would be, and that we're the biggest miracle of all, that we can improve the world with our actions, our speech, our deeds, our attitude, our thoughts. But since Adam did eat from the tree, so since that time, as man has been replacing God with his own self, like it says here, you'll be like, as soon as you eat from the tree, you'll be like God, knowing what's good and bad. A whole new set of what's good and bad, a whole new set of values and ethics was developed as soon as Adam ate from the tree. The whole thing became confusing. He was all had to figure out everything on his own and made up these old weird rules that eventually brought to the flood and brought to these terrible things. Okay, now there's this weird story, and it's like this, that after the flood, something like 300 years after the flood or something like that, all the people in the world decided. No, I'm sorry. That's what that's Parshas. After the flood, good. The people in the world, they decided they were going to make a tower, Bavel. And this is at the end of Parshas Noach. The Rebbe talks about this, that the people in the world realize there's this big secret, and that is that God has the world so confusing because He wants us to make order. He wants us to make peace and harmony. So they got the secret of harmony. They said, we're going to make harmony. We'll make peace between each other. And when there's peace and brotherhood, then we can make up our own laws. We can do whatever we want to, because that's the secret of why God created the world. And they did it, and it worked. They made this big tower, and God had to confuse their mouth in order to their language, so they didn't understand anything, and then there wasn't any peace. They couldn't work together, and they couldn't. Okay, and then afterward, this was in the time Abraham was still alive. Abraham was alive in the time of the Tower of Babel. And so it was the last, 10 years before Noah died, or something like that, was the Tower of Babel. Okay, then he comes along Abraham. Now the world did not really improve that much from before the flood. It did improve. There was definitely a somewhat of an improvement. It was really bad before that. And now, but still, basically, people were still very selfish. And one of the best examples, the most horrendous examples, was the towns of Sodom and Amorah. Sodom and Amorah, and which eventually God has to destroy totally. And Abraham tries to pray that they should get to save them. Maybe there's a couple of tzaddikim there that can redeem the towns. But God says this very strange statement. And He says, Erdana v'er'eh, I will go down and I will see, katsa'akasam asa, like their screams, according to their screams, I will react, God says. What's going on? In Sodom and Amorah, they were sadistic people. And they got tremendous pleasure from torturing people and cutting people's limbs off and doing these weird tricks. The person would come and they would give him a free lodging. They would put him in a big bed if the bed was to say, it's too big for you, and they would stretch him. They would stretch the person. If ever they give him a little bed, it's too long, they would cut off his legs. Everybody would give him charity. A new person would come into the town, they would give him charity. And then all the coins were marked. When he would go to stores, nobody would sell him anything with these marked coins. So the person would eventually starve to death. He thought he had something, money in his pocket, so he could. And they smeared people with honey and put them on the roof so that the ants or bees, whatever, would eat them. And one of the ways they would signal, if there was a guest, they would go to the next door neighbor and say, maybe you have any salt, I have a guest. So everybody would all get together and this. Okay. So it's a strange story, but even stranger, it says, God says, I'm going to go down and I'm going to see what they're doing.
Why does He have to go down and see? Why doesn't He know?
So, God is everywhere. God creates everything. God creates everything in Himself. And God is healthy, I know there are people that they get anesthetized. There's people, I knew somebody that had diabetes, and he had to check his fingers, check the bottoms of his feet, because he lost his feeling. So he didn't know what was happening. But God is not like that. God knows what's going on in His own, want to call it, body. Not to mislead anybody. And the whole world is God's body. If you want to call it, it's not outside of God. Let's put it that way. So how could it be that God did not know what was going on in the world, that He has to say, I'm going to go down. I hear their screams of the people that are being tortured. I have to go down and see. What does it mean He says go down? Go see. But it says it in the Bible. There it is. Now this is very misleading. Because here's this big message we're trying to give to the whole world, the Jewish people, that God is everywhere and He cares about everything and He creates everything and everything is being created constantly by God. And God is very good and God is very kind. And all of a sudden here we see a sentence like this, that God says, I don't know what's going on in the world. I have to go down and see. There's to go down. Where God is up. What's going on? The heavens are closer to God. What's going on here? God is creating everything. Nothing. A stone is the same thing to God as the highest angel, the highest world. Erdana. Here we go. Okay, maybe turn it off and we'll start now a new thing.